Baik, halo, selamat sore semua Bapak, kemudian juga Ibu, dan juga saudara-saudara dan juga kawan-kawan yang saat ini mungkin beberapa di antara peserta adalah pekerja di institusi klaim yang kita undang untuk acara hari ini. Atau juga mungkin Anda adalah seorang pengguna jasa institusi tersebut. Selamat sore, selamat datang di sebuah webinar yang merupakan rangkaian dari acara peringatan Hari Domain Publik di 2022. Adalah sebuah kegiatan yang kami lakukan setiap tahun di awal tahun, tepatnya di bulan Januari. Kami dari Wikimedia Indonesia, kemudian juga dari Goethe-Institut, kemudian juga bekerja sama juga dengan Creative Commons. Tiga organisasi ini berkolaborasi untuk menghadirkan sebuah acara, dan memang untuk beberapa akhir ini memang kita lebih banyak daring seperti itu, dan kita berharap walaupun kondisi saat ini di pandemi seperti ini, kita tetap menambah pengetahuan kita dan juga tetap merayakan yang namanya Hari Domain Publik. Hari perayaan Domain Publik tersebut biasanya tidak hanya kita isi dengan hal-hal yang bersifat domain publik, tapi juga kami mencoba untuk meningkatkan awareness tentang hak cipta, atau makin peduli tentang hak cipta. Jadi kita tahu tentang hak cipta, tahu tentang ruang publik dan bagaimana aturan-aturan yang ada di dalamnya. Oleh karena itu salah satunya juga yang terkait dengan hak cipta tersebut, kali ini kita membahas tentang sebuah platform yaitu Europeana yang berasal dari Eropa. Kemudian platform ini kurang lebih juga mempunyai hal-hal atau juga benda-benda yang sifatnya adalah domain publik atau juga terbuka seperti itu. Sedikit tentang Europeana, saya bisa bilang Europeana sendiri kalau Anda bisa lihat di internet, itu merupakan portal web Uni Eropa yang menyimpan kemudian menyebarkan koleksi digital. Saat ini sekitar 3.700 museum di seluruh Eropa itu sudah punya koleksi digitalnya, dan mereka sudah mempostingnya atau menaruhnya di sebuah web tersebut namanya Europeana. Kemudian saat ini lebih dari 50 juta karya seni warisan budaya tersedia di platform tersebut, kemudian disajikan dengan format yang relevan dengan kebutuhan penggunaan modern. Yang pasti Komisi Eropa mendanai proyek Europeana ini, dan tentunya kita akan belajar banyak dari Europeana karena kita sudah kedatangan juga pembicara kita hari ini, ada Alba Irollo, kemudian ada juga Nuno Freire. Sedikit tentang Alba. Alba saat ini berada di Europeana Research, ya, yang menjembatani antara Europeana Foundation dan peneliti, kemudian juga lembaga penelitian dan infrastruktur. Dia mengkoordinasikan kegiatan Dewan Penasihat Riset dan merupakan manajer komunitas riset Europeana. Selain bertanggung jawab atas program hibah penelitian, dia berkontribusi membangun kemitraan yang kompetitif dalam program Horizon 2020 dan European Science Cloud. Kemudian Alba juga memiliki gelar PhD dalam sejarah seni dan aktif sebagai peneliti juga di bidang studi warisan dan juga museum, ya, warisan budaya dalam hal ini. Dan baru-baru ini ia telah mengembangkan minat khusus dalam kebijakan di bidang budaya. Kita juga ada pembicara kedua namanya Nuno Freire yang meraih gelar PhD bidang informatika, teknik komputer dari University of Lisbon, ya. Domain minat utamanya adalah warisan budaya. Dia bekerja di Europeana Research and Development dengan minat penelitian berfokus pada metode baru untuk agregasi data dan pada pemodelan data untuk pemeliharaan dan evolusi model data Europeana. Banyak, ya. Nanti kalau mau tanya-tanya nanti bisa ada saat-saatnya bertanya dengan para expert kita kali ini. Kemudian Nuno juga menjadi anggota komite program konferensi internasional, terutama di bidang perpustakaan digital. Kemudian JCDL, ya, di sebuah konferensi bersama sebuah perpustakaan digital. Banyak lagi TDL, yaitu teori dan praktik di perpustakaan digital, semantics, CIKM, dan dia juga menjadi reviewer untuk International Journal on Digital Libraries. Kita tidak akan berpanjang-panjang. Yang pasti pembukaan tadi barusan saya sampaikan. Yang pasti setelah ini Anda, Bapak, Ibu, Saudara sekalian akan menikmati presentasi dari pembicara kita. Ada lebih kurang 20 sampai 25 menit, ada presentasi tentang apa itu Europeana, apa itu platform itu tersebut, bagaimana, terus bagaimana cara bekerjanya, terus prinsip yang digunakan apa, bagaimana dengan hak ciptanya, bagaimana apakah penggunaan fair-nya, bagaimana open data, bagaimana itu nanti mudah-mudahan akan mengundang begitu banyak pertanyaan yang pastinya, dan nanti setelah sesi presentasi saya akan juga undang Bapak Ibu Saudara sekalian semuanya untuk memberikan pertanyaan di kolom komentar, dan jangan lupa juga karena presentasi dalam berbahasa Inggris, ya maksud saya presentasinya ada dalam bahasa Inggris, Anda yang ingin mendengarkan informasi presentasi tersebut dalam bahasa Indonesia, jangan lupa ada menu interpretation di bagian bawah, dan Anda bisa mengkliknya untuk mendengar presentasi tersebut dalam bahasa Indonesia. Tanpa berpanjang-panjang lagi, saya pikir saatnya kita sekarang, Bapak Ibu semua, kita akan mendengarkan paparan kita mulai dari Alba Irollo. Alba, it's your turn to give your talks first.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Hardian, for this kind introduction, and to all the organizers for having two representatives from Europeana today. We are very glad to be with you just on the occasion of a public domain day in Indonesia. Can I have slides on, please? Yeah. Next slide, please. You may not know this about Europeana, but in its early days, one of the first initiatives to truly consolidate the role of Europeana in the European cultural heritage sector was the publication of a policy document on the public domain. Back to 2010, under the title of Europeana Public Domain Charter, this document highlighted the cultural value of public domain cultural heritage in enlarging access to knowledge and in paving the way to the production of further knowledge. It has been translated into 14 languages over the course of time, and one of them, finally in 2020, was just Bahasa Indonesia. Both my colleague, Nuno, Freire, and I are busy with the research at Europeana, but from two different perspectives. Nuno supports the research and development team that is composed of experts in computer science, while I'm responsible for Europeana Research, conceived as a bridge between Europeana and universities, research institutes, and infrastructures interested in digital scholarship, in humanities mainly, and so in the use of digital cultural heritage. It is also from these two different perspectives that we will address the topic of today: the FAIR principles, how Europeana advocates from them, how Europeana implements them. Next slide, please. Advocacy, technology, and capacity building continuously intersect in the work of Europeana. Perhaps you know Europeana is a website, but Europeana is a lot more than that. By definition, Europeana is an initiative of the European Union developed with the financial support of all its member states. And the Europeana has a particular mission that is to empower the cultural heritage sector in its digital transformation. Since digital transformation may mean different things to different people in different contexts, to us too, where we are in different parts of the world, we recently engaged our network in a collaborative effort to get to a shared and shareable definition digital transformation. The short video I'm about to show you explains which one it is. On the next slide, please.
Digital transformation is both the process and the result of using digital technology to transform how an organization works. It helps an organization to thrive, fulfill its mission, and meet the needs of its stakeholders. Digital transformation can be driven by heritage professionals of any level. Everyone can be an agent of change. It is not just about technology, it's about mindsets and personal capabilities. The impact of digital transformation will be different for each individual organization. Each change, no matter how small, contributes to a cultural heritage sector powered by digital and a Europe powered by culture. Europeana's focus is on digital transformation relating to the digital discovery of cultural heritage collections. This includes, but is not limited to, efforts that help cultural heritage institutions to develop their leadership and capacity for digital transformation, to strengthen infrastructure, improve interoperability, enrich data, share collections, and engage with audiences. Europeana empowers the cultural heritage sector in its digital transformation, helping it to embrace digital change and encouraging partnerships that foster innovation. We lead with our specialist expertise when appropriate and collaborate when that expertise lies in other networks. Do you want to know more about our work? Then go to pro.europeana.eu.
Next slide, please. The Europeana journey started with the Europeana website, europeana.eu, and still revolves around it in some way. The website was officially launched in November 2008 and currently provides access to over 15 million items coming from 3,700 cultural heritage institutions such as museums, libraries, archives, and audiovisual archives. The website is available in 24 languages, not by chance, as 24 are the official languages of the member states of the European Union. Next slide, please. What can you find on Europeana? Both digitized and digital-born cultural heritage. Thinking in terms of digital items, you can find images, text, audiovisual materials, and 3D objects. That is to say, from the perspective of users, you can find from books to manuscripts, from painting to architecture, from musical performances to documentaries, from archival documents to fashion. Next slide. Approximately 50% of items in Europeana.eu can be used with no copyright restrictions or condition. 25% more are available for some kind of use. You can search and browse on Europeana.eu, but also benefit from resources aggregated in thematic collections. For example, there are collections on archaeology, art, photography, manuscripts, and there is also the newspapers collection. Next slide. I like to say that this collection is our flagship and can be considered the most relevant for research purposes, with over 1,000 newspaper titles from 23 European libraries and roughly 10 million pages available as high-quality images and full text. Europeana website was conceived and is being developed for a wide audience. This is why you can find there a variety of cultural content designed for this audience in the form of blog posts and exhibitions grouped under stories. Next slide. You can also find galleries, including galleries created by users. You can also create your own galleries and opt for making them available online. But given the specificity of the sector where Europeana operates, that is the cultural heritage sector, it is quite natural that all the main user base of Europeana.eu is significantly composed of professionals in the same sector. Cultural and creative industries employ 2 million people in Europe. Sorry, 2 million people in Europe. Nevertheless, user base of Europeana.eu is also significantly composed of teachers, students, academics, researchers. Next slide. Academics and researchers are among the most so to speak, demanding users with the most specific needs, but also after cultural heritage professionals, they represent the second sector most interested in Europeana as an initiative, especially in the expertise, services, and tools that Europeana offers. You can have access to them through a satellite website of Europeana.eu, that is Europeana Pro. Next slide. To meet users' needs and to continue developing a platform that is user-centered, we pay close attention to the voice of our stakeholders. For this reason, we cooperate with the research infrastructures that aggregate and represent research communities. Next slide. Sorry, it's the previous one. Under the umbrella of Europeana Research, we nurture a partnership with Clarin, a European digital infrastructure that supports research based on language resources, and we also benefit from a long-standing collaboration with ARIA, European Digital Infrastructure for the Arts and Humanities. These infrastructures help Europeana bring cultural heritage data closer to academics and researchers. For example, Clarin harvests resources from Europeana.eu in a structural way and reinforces their potential reuse, making these resources accessible through the Clarin Virtual Language Observatory in combination with a variety of digital tools that support data mining. Today, we have a common challenge in front of us, but also great opportunity, those that come from the European Open Science Cloud, known also under the acronym EOSC, which is sustained by the European Union to foster open science in Europe by promoting the access and reuse of research data. In research contexts, cultural heritage data too are considered research data to some extent. For this reason, it's fundamental that cultural heritage data meet the so-called FAIR principles. Europeana advocates for the FAIR principles by making the content providers aware of their importance with a sense of responsibility generated by the fact that thousands of European institutions look at Europeana as an example to follow. Europeana also tries to meet these principles through Europeana.eu, and my colleague Nuno Freire will explain how.
Provide them in the context of the FAIR principles. So I'll start by the first one, F, to be findable. Next slide. So regarding being findable, Europeana is a searchable and a registered data set. So this means that the Europeana data set is of course searchable within the Europeana portal. This is one of the primary goals of Europeana, is to make everything searchable in its own portal. But we also make sure that the Europeana dataset is registered in other places so that it can be discovered by other communities. So we worked, as Alba already mentioned, we worked closely with the European research infrastructures and make sure that the dataset is discoverable there. So it's available in Clarin, it has been made available also in EUDAT. And we are very close to be publishing the Europeana dataset in data.europa.eu. It's the official portal from the European Commission for European data. Next slide, please. So another important aspect of being findable is using persistent identification. Europeana promotes the persistent identification of cultural heritage objects and also of their metadata. So it's not just Europeana itself. We also, this is very important that our data providers provide persistent identification for their objects. So Europeana promotes the use of persistent identification also within its network. And Europeana itself, it assigns a persistent identifier to every record. And the Europeana identifiers are URIs, and they are included in the data records in all formats that the dataset is available. So the URIs are consistently applied whenever, in whatever form Europeana makes the data available. Next slide, please. So about being accessible. Next, please. So also related with identifiers. So the identifiers that Europeana assigns are resolvable. So they are HTTP URIs, which, so if a user uses them on a web browser, it leads the users to the web page on the portal that displays the objects. But if it is a data service trying to reach the data behind what is shown in the portal, the identifier also leads the machines to the data. So, and also Europeana tries to resolve URIs which may have become obsolete during its operation for different operational reasons. Next slide, please. Another important aspect is having a standard access and free access to the metadata. The Europeana dataset is accessible through the web APIs that implement open standard protocols. It is available using the linked data protocols and practices, and this includes the Sparkle protocol for querying using the linked data, and open search, and it's also available via OAI-PMH. And the access to the data is free, and there is no obstacles. So it's free and it's open and it's straightforward. So there is no requirement for authentication just to get hold of the data. Next slide, please. Being interoperable. Next, please. So Europeana operates in a very heterogeneous environment. So we deal with the data that comes from museums, libraries, archives, and all these different institutions, well, they even have different practices across the different countries in Europe. So the data that we have to deal with is very heterogeneous. We have a very, the data providers with a wide variety of metadata standards. Next slide, please. So to deal with all this heterogeneity, Europeana has defined within its network a data model that allows this specialized for being applied in the description of cultural heritage objects. This is the Europeana data model. Next slide, please. So the Europeana data model uses mostly vocabularies which are already being used somewhere else in the world. Most of the majority of elements that form the Europeana data model are not defined by Europeana itself. It's just reuse of other vocabularies. The WinCore, CDOC CRM, SCOS, FOF are some of the cases. Next slide, please. So in EDM, so it is maintained by Europeana, but involving the whole community. So it involves the experts from libraries, archives, museums, and also the academics who are experts in this area. We take the input from different communities and this is what makes the model quite strong and applicable. It's even used outside of Europe. So it's really a collaborative effort. Next slide, please. So finally, to be reusable. Next, please. So for reuse, so it's important the aspects of rights and licenses. So any metadata that is provided to Europeana needs to be licensed under Creative Commons CC0. And also all the data that Europeana publishes, so the full aggregated data set is then published also under CC0. So the metadata can always be reused without constraints. Now, regarding the rights for using the content, so the digital objects themselves, Europeana makes it mandatory for data providers to mention it in every record. So, and they need to use right statements from Creative Commons or from rightstatements.org. So, and this allows end users to find out whenever they can, what can they do with the digital objects they are looking at in Europeana. Next slide, please. Another aspect is provenance. So the provenance of the data is always stated, and it acknowledges the original data provider and all the intermediaries in the aggregation workflow. So sometimes before the data reaches Europeana, usually it goes between aggregators, sometimes domain aggregators, like domain aggregators for the area of libraries or for museums, or sometimes it's a national aggregator that collects all the cultural heritage data in a country and then delivers it to Europeana. So all the intervenients are always acknowledged in the metadata. Next slide, please. So, and about being reusable, again, we make sure that the metadata is available according to domain relevant standards. So EDM is already highly based on these standards. So we don't even just by making EDM available, we are already making sure that the data can be reused with well-known schemas and models. But we also make some effort to convert the metadata to other formats, which can also facilitate reuse. And perhaps a good example is Schemalator. The data can also be obtained in that format. Next slide, please. And well, this concludes our presentation. So I pass the word to Hardy now. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Alba and Nuno. That was quite interesting about Europeana and also their principles that is applied there in Europeana. And Bapak Ibu semua saudara sekalian, itu tadi sebuah presentasi ya tentang apa itu Europeana yang sudah disampaikan oleh Alba, bagaimana platformnya seperti apa, kemudian juga bahwasanya datanya itu terbuka seperti itu, kemudian juga disampaikan dengan detail tadi Nuno dari F ya, Findable, A, Accessible, I, Interoperable, dan kemudian juga Reusable. Ternyata sudah sebegitu terbukanya data budaya itu sudah sebegitu terbukanya di Eropa. Jadi saya pikir sudah cukup menggambarkan dari apa yang menjadi bahasan kita hari ini, dan saya juga mengundang I invite you all to give your questions to our speakers for this afternoon ya, untuk sore ini. Kalau ada pertanyaan silahkan Anda bisa ketik di kolom chat dan nanti akan dijawab oleh Alba and Nuno. But before that, I would like to ask you a question first, Alba and Nuno. May I know that is it a kind of a must? Yeah, it's a must to join European for all the cultural sectors in Europe, something like that. It's a kind of obligations to join this platform there in Europe.
Actually, it's not an obligation. We try to collaborate with all the member states as much as possible, and also to offer services beyond the sharing of the resources through the platform. It's more a leadership that we aim to have for the cultural heritage sector in the cultural heritage sector, but it's not an obligation.
Yeah. Okay. I see. So, does it cover all the institutions in Europe, or it's still on progress to complete to make all the institutions to join this platform? I may ask the percentations.
Yeah, it's a quite interesting number, 3,700 content providers, but of course we are a bit far from reaching all the institutions in Europe. I must say also that there is a debate now in Europe about digitization, and inter alia we will know more in a few months, because Europeana has a kind of observatory on the state of digitization in Europe that is called Enumerate. Europeana brings the legacy of Enumerate forward, and we have been asked by the European Commission to another Enumerate survey, just to test the field and understand at which point the state of the digitization in EU is. So we will know more at the end of this year, because we will launch this survey in a few months.
Yeah, so it's been 14 years, all right, Europeana exists, and how do you see this platform? I mean, what benefits or impacts that can be seen from this platform so far to the community, or especially for the European itself? Then
there is a lot of interest around Europeana, also because it provides and follows standards. But in Europe, the responsibility over cultural heritage is still up to the member states of the European Union, so it's not centralized. In a way, we accompany all the digitization initiative that happens at the level of member states, and we try also to push so that the sharing of resources doesn't not happen only at the level of each state, but also at the European level. Because the main aim of Europeana is to make the sense of belonging to Europe stronger, just through the platform. And of course, the benefit that the cultural heritage institutions that are content provider Europeana see in Europeana is the fact that the platform itself make the availability of the resources at another level. They are more findable, accessible, and interoperable and reusable to Europeana.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And I also wonder who mostly use this platform. Are they researchers, university students?
The platform is for everyone. And it's conceived also for a wide audience. As I said in my presentation, there is a strong interest coming just from academics and researchers in Europeana resources. They are most interested in the resources themselves than for example, in the curatorial content. Instead, in other sectors, it's just the contract. Citizens are more interested in our exhibition, in the possibility to build galleries, to use the platform in this sense.
Okay, back to the institutions. What kind of approach that Europeana do to approach the institution to open their collection to a European platform?
We benefit from a network association that is composed of 3,000 cultural heritage professionals, academics, educators, people interested in communication, and they help us a lot as ambassadors in Europe, ambassadors Europeana. But also the platform is built thanks to the support of aggregators, and we have currently 20 aggregators that can be national aggregators or thematic aggregators. And they are those who bring the collection from the digital resources from the content providers to Europeana, concretely. And especially the national aggregators help us spread the word around Europeana in their states at the national level.
Okay, thank you, Alba. There's a question from Rahmat. I don't know, it is maybe for Nuno. Is there any example or case like other institutions outside Europe using data from Europeana and how they use that data, like their metadata? Is it using API or something?
So yeah, that is one. I know it's a very good example in Asia, which is Japan, who actually has a search functionality directly in Europeana using the Sparkle endpoint. So one of the open APIs, as I mentioned, related with linked data. So the Japanese cultural heritage portal is searching in Europeana. There are also another aspect that happens frequently is the use of the Europeana data model being used in other countries. So they also adopt it as their standard for doing national aggregators. So this also happens outside of Europe. We know even the PLA, let's say the similar organization as Europeana in the United States has a data model that is also based on the Europeana data model. There are also other cases in Asia, for example, that are using the Europeana data model. Actually, I was in the Dublin Core conference 3 years ago in Korea, and really there were 2 or 3 examples of Asian countries that were using the Europeana data model.
So it's okay, of course, because it is open, right?
Yeah, it's open, and it's really as a data model for representing cultural heritage. It's really a very good model, and for achieving interoperability across the whole domain, the different domains of cultural heritage institutions, it's very good.
Okay, more question from Yvonne. Aside from Europeana, which other cultural institutions also apply this FAIR principle?
So yeah, this is very hard to track down. So in principle, well, by being a participant in Europeana, you to some extent need to apply to FAIR principles, because Europeana already accepts only data that is free to reuse. It needs to be represented in EDM, so it's represented using standards, and they need to be shared with Europeana using OEI-PMH. So it's also an open API for accessing data. So let's say the participants of Europeana are somehow, by participating in Europeana, by implementing the necessary process to provide Europeana, they are giving a step ahead in the FAIR principles to making sure that the data that they produce is fair.
Thank you. Hope that's answering, Yvonne. And then still related to, this is about the word when. A question from Tasya Dwi Putri. When a work is uploaded, is there any kind of examination by the platform so that the work should be firstly checked and make sure that there's no infringement of copyrights? And is there any case where the work has been uploaded to the platform and turned out has infringed on one copyright? How the platform deal with this that case?
So there is a process for ingesting data in Europeana that makes several validations in the metadata that is received. So there is minimum metadata, there is a minimum quality of the digital objects that are provided to Europeana, and they all need to have a statement about the rights for reuse. So it's mandatory. So Europeana does not have the capacity to check if those statements, so the right statements, if they are well assigned or not. That is, it would be too much effort to check all of them, or I don't think it would be possible. But it's the responsibility of the data providers to make sure that they assign it the correct rights to each object.
So far, is there any reports about that case? About the platform? I mean, the infringement in the platform. Is there any reports about that?
Not directly to the platform, if I may, because in a way we also suggest users to check with the institutions if the resources are reusable and under which limits. So in the end, it's the responsibility of the users to check if they want to reuse our resources. And at the same time, we also ask content providers to update the information that they provide with reference to rights statements that accompany the resources. Harry, sorry, you are muted.
I'm really sorry. There's a question from Salomo Christian. I want to know about the data source of cultural heritage that documented through Europeana. Is there any collection of Europeana which comes from outside Europe?
Yeah, actually, the countries represented in Europeana are approximately 40, so more than the member states of the European Union.
Okay.
However, it's mainly a platform for European digital.
European only, yeah. Okay, let's see. And then I would like to check the question. Yeah, this is a question from Harsa. How do you balance open access with income generating pressures? Do you get the point?
Today is a public domain day, and so we have to say that when cultural heritage is in the public domain, each type of use is possible. Anyway, from the perspective of cultural heritage institutions, we are also to add that there is evidence of the fact that trying to sell the digital reproduction of cultural heritage items does not provide so much revenue. So it is not convenient also from an institutional perspective. In a way, we have never tried to do that. It's not in the mission of Europeana to sell digital reproduction.
But someone can do that. I mean, personal can do that for income generate, something like that. Someone can get benefits from the collections.
Some institutions in Europe have realized that after making available digital cultural heritage in open access, then somebody has tried to sell the same cultural heritage data, but it doesn't work on the long term because people spot the it is not convenient that they can have the same access for free.
Okay, still this, the next question from Harsa, how should we manage collection, include material relating to traditional knowledge and indigenous communities? How about its approach, permission, licensing, and appropriate acknowledgement for this material and its communities? I think it's related to the institution, right? I don't know. Maybe Alba can answer the question.
In this case, it's always who provides the content to decide about the right statement that the content should have. So it's an agreement that they should reach, the institution, they should reach with the content providers. In this case, also, it's a particular approach that they should have with indigenous communities, because in a way, if I understand right, it's also user-generated content. So they have to clarify and which right statements they want to make this content available.
Thank you, Alba. And I think this is something, yeah, a question, the technical question. I think I want to know about the representation online public catalog collection in Europeana. Is Europeana used like AACR, RGA, and other for describe for data access? Maybe Nuno. The last question from Pramukti. Nuno, maybe.
Okay, I understand. Trying to understand, to see what the acronym or acronyms meant. So this kind of practices, so it's kind of, they are part of the heterogeneity that I mentioned in my part of the presentation. So the part about being interoperable. So Europeana needs to deal with many organizations that apply these principles, these procedures, the Anglo-American cataloging rules and RDA. So we have so the same organizations that have developed RDA, for example, they have also contributed to the development of EDM. So those particular practices are taken in consideration into EDM. But EDM needs to be interoperable across all the different practices. So we receive data from that comes from all the domains. So we take into consideration these principles, these procedures, and we try to make something that works for everyone, always working with the community.
Okay, thank you, Nuno. I hope that's yeah, answering your question, Pramukti, and we still invite you, Bapak Ibu semua, untuk memberikan pertanyaan. Silakan, masih ada waktu lebih kurang 10 menit lagi sampai sebelum jam 4 kita mengakhiri webinar kali ini. Kemudian ya, silakan langsung ke kolom chat untuk pertanyaannya. Okay, right. We continue. Maybe this is still a question for me. I read from the catalog, I mean from your booklet or something, that this fair data is not the same like open data. Can you give your explanation about fair data and open data, something?
So let me see. Yeah, there's the difference between open, free, and fair. So let's say, so being free, it means that it's completely, you need to be able to, you can use it, you don't need to pay anything. So if it's open, so it's just one of the FAIR principles, let's say. It covers part of the FAIR principles being open. So it can be accessed, but you still need to say something more about it. You need to make sure that it can be accessed in a way that is standard. So it can be open, but there can be many technical barriers to actually access the data if you don't apply all the FAIR principles. So that's why we need to be, the data should be open, and then it should also be easy to access, easy to interpret, easy to reuse. So there shouldn't be other kind of obstacles. And there is also one more aspect that is important to mention, which is you can be fair, but it does not mean that it's free. Being fair, you may comply, you make it available according to standards, it's available. It may be available only with some authentication, for example, but it's, as long as it's all stated and clear in the metadata about the data, then it's fair. It's fair to have data that's not fully open, as long as it complies with all the principles of reuse, interoperability, etc. So it's a matter. So there is an overlap between all these concepts, but yeah, there are several aspects to take in consideration, and FAIR tries to cover all the aspects, including those who have interests in the data and not making it fully free, for example. Yeah.
Thank you, Nuno. Maybe next I want to ask Alba and also you also about what's happening here. I mean, so far here, I can say that some of the institution or cultural institution here in Indonesia, really, they have problems in opening the data. Not only just opening the data, but also afraid they open the data. I hope, yeah, I really want you to encourage kind of the reasons that this open data is really benefit for all the people. Maybe we can say something before we close this webinar, because no more question. I hope that Alba and also Nuno can encourage institution, GLAM institution or cultural institution here in Indonesia to open the data, that they are not supposed to be afraid to open that data, something like that. Maybe you can start from you first, Alba.
Yeah, not only they shouldn't be afraid, but they should feel that is part of our mission, of their mission to open the data. And so in this way to encourage the production of new knowledge in each and every sector that can be interested in cultural heritage data. And also they shouldn't be afraid, because in the end, they will see on the short term, but much more on the long term, a huge benefit from that, because the perception of their institution will change in people's minds if they open the data.
That's digital transformations
yeah, exactly.
is for, right? And
that encourage participation from people, and so encourage participatory practices. And opening data is a way to encourage this kind of practices, to make the community feel part of a common discourse about cultural heritage.
Do you think university also play very important roles in advocating something like this, opening the data?
Totally, yes. Especially when universities and academics help with interpretation data, help create material that are in digital collections.
Right, thank you, Alba. And then Nuno? I'm sorry, I cannot hear you clearly.
You're muted.
So I think today it becomes not sharing data. An institution may have a lot even to lose, because it will be kind of invisible. As other institutions make their data available, people have many data available already. And an institution that does not take part in the opening of data is hiding itself and not being able for others to discover it. So it's important for knowing what an institution does, what it produces, what it has, its value. It's important to make sure that its data, it's known, it can be discovered. So it's fulfilling, it's really very important for fulfilling the mission of a cultural heritage institution, in my opinion.
Thank you, Nuno. So if you don't want to be invisible, yeah, just open your data.
Yeah.
Okay, I think no more question. I also want to thank to all the attendees for this webinar. Thank you for your questions. Hope that's answering. If you have more questions, you may also contact us and also contact Alba and Nuno directly from the Europeana platform, right? Their profile is on the website. Alba, Nuno, thank you very much. It's such nice talks, nice presentations. It's opened our eyes a bit about opening the collection. Hopes that what you do there in Europeana also can be happen here in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you
very much.
Bye.
It was a pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye.